Cool. Okay, everyone, welcome. Good evening to this 69th SoConnect Data Meetup. Tonight we will dive into the world of Microsoft Fabric, and we will elaborate on the self-service experience on Fabric. That will be the focus for today. Before we move on, please mute your microphone. You can leave your webcam on if you want, and this recording will be recorded, or the session will be recorded and will be made available with you afterwards. At the end of the session, we will have plenty of time for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put them into the Teams chat so we can pick it up later at the end of our session. That being said, let's start with the session. And before we're going to dive into Fabric itself, we want to set the stage for tonight. Last week we had a storm called Louis, which resulted in a lot of flights that had been cancelled at Schiphol due to the winds. And I think that's a situation that unfortunately all of us have been familiar with, or at least know what the feeling is. We are going to use this example later on and throughout the session to make the things that we say very practical, and you get a real feeling of, okay, how can Fabric help you in particular in this situation? So keep it in mind, Michael will elaborate a little bit more later on about the use case, but that will be the approach that we are using tonight. So what will we be talking about tonight, and who will be talking? Michael Alkema, who is a data engineer at Sogeti for over 4 years, and he knows all about batch on Fabric. Then we have Hammond, who is a technology consultant also at Sogeti. And he is a real CI/CD guru and knows all about DevOps and DataOps. And myself, Martijn, who is also a data engineer at Sogeti. So that's other people that will be presenting tonight. And what will we be presenting? Michael will walk you through the use case, which has to do with the flight industry. And he will also set the stage, okay, what is Microsoft Fabric? Probably a lot of you have visited our previous session about the intro to Microsoft Fabric, but just to be sure that we are all on the same page, we're going to briefly, touch the topic again to set the stage for everyone, that everyone knows what Microsoft Fabric is. Then we will move on to how we can use batch data in Fabric, and afterwards we will see how we can use streaming data in Fabric, and both of these topics will be combined with a live demonstration, so we can really see the power of Fabric in action. After that, Hammond will walk us through how CI/CD should play a role within your data ecosystem and also within Fabric, why you should use it and how you can use it. And after that, we of course will have some key takeaways, and perhaps the most interesting part of the evening is of course the Q&A, where we can really dive in depth, and we encourage you to ask your questions, and we will try to answer them as good as possible. So that being said, that is the outline for tonight. So I think it's time to move on to our use case.
All right. Well, thank you, Martijn. I'm gonna talk about our use case. And the three of us were actually going to start a business, and we're providing a flight claim service. So basically, you know that if you're flying, then sometimes you have a delay. And there are all these rules that if you delay lasts for a certain amount of time, and if there are like certain conditions met, then you are entitled to a reimbursement. And we actually want to help people get this reimbursement, right? So it's just very unfortunate if you're like stuck at an airport and you have to wait for the airplanes. And then it's just really nice to know that when you're back, you're getting some money back from this very poorly trip, right? So we're going to help people with this. And we're going to do this in a clever way because, we're, of course, experts in the field of data. So we're going to use this knowledge to provide the ideal flight claim service. So what do we actually, how do we want to do that? We want to use streaming data to keep track of all the flights that are happening. We're keeping track of the flights that are going to the Netherlands. And if some flights get delayed, we want to know that as soon as possible. And on top of that, we also want to start keeping track of the history, right? So if we see that certain flight companies or certain routes have like a lot of delay, we will know about this because we're keeping the history, right? And in this way, we want to provide this really nice service. The only thing is we're with a team of 3, so that's not really a lot of people. So we just can't really use like random applications that we like and then just all tie them together, because it's going to be a really big hassle to tie everything together and to get everything configured. So, wouldn't it be nice if there existed like a product that we could use that kind of has everything in one product? Well, luckily, you guys are joining Microsoft Fabric, SoConnect Data. So, this is going to be our solution. So like Martijn said, we already had a session on Microsoft Fabric provided by Erik Kuipers. So yeah, we're not really going deep dive into what Microsoft Fabric is, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more. So what is Microsoft Fabric? So Microsoft Fabric is basically a microservices platform for cloud applications. And what you need to think with this is that Microsoft has different cloud applications. And you can think about, for example, Power BI or Data Factory. And basically, it now has this one platform or this one product where all these services are integrated. So yeah, this is like a highly integrated end-to-end product. And it's just really easy for developers to use this platform where everyone can work together on the same thing. And this enables self-serving, right? So what you have here is that, for example, I can do something in Data Factory, what I will show later on. And this is stored in a central location that other people can use again for their own projects. So this is really, really powerful, and also, yeah, it's just really easy to use. So if we take a look at the architecture of Microsoft Fabric, then, well, we have this slide over here. And up top, you can see different services that they provide. So in our session, we're going to talk about Data Factory, but also the real-time analytics, and also a bit Power BI. And then down on the architecture slide, you can see that, yeah, everything kind of has the same storage. So the data that I'll put into data or like Microsoft Fabric, this will be accessible to anyone else that's working in our workspace, which is really nice. Is really, really handy. So yeah, let's continue to our batch data part. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you guys have already experience with batch data. So I'm going to kind of fly over this one, so we have more time for the demo. But basically, kind of like a recap, batch data, it's like data that you process kind of on an interval based. So what you have is like you kind of like process the data in like big parts, right? So it's non-real time as opposed to streaming data. And usually these kind of data or like these data sets are aggregated. So think about like monthly or yearly data sets or stuff like that. And the idea is that you kind of want to save this data and kind of build a history. And on top of that, you can build your reports or see trends and yeah, do your analysis on. Well, with that having said, we're going to go to the truly nice part, because we're going to have our demo right here, our first demo, actually. So yeah, we can still see the screen. This mess here is our workspace. And Martijn asked me in our company, if I can load or like provide some detail about all the KLM aircrafts that we have. And I found like a really nice CSV file that has like a lot of metadata about all these different airplanes. And we're going to put this in our environment. So what we're going to do first is create a data pipeline. And we have our data sets. We have this on a blob storage, and we want to ingest that. So we're going to call it like ingest flight metadata And let's give it today's date just for this demo. And well, let's create this. And basically what we're going to do first is just copy the data, just insert it all into our environment. So we want to load from a blob storage over here. And we already have established connections, so we don't have to do this during the demo. And basically, this is our blob storage, right? So we're going to our flight metadata. And then over here, we have the metadata that we want. And now it's going to check and see this is our really messy data set. And it sees that it's a CSV file, and it uses the first row as header. So that's great. That's what we want. And now we have to choose a destination, and we want to have this in a lake house. So we're picking this one. And we want to have a new lake house. So we're going to call it lake house light data. And then again, just for today, we're going to put the date in there. So it will automatically create this lake house for us. And then, well, this is the data that we want to load in. And this is a kind of like nice overview, but we don't start a data transfer immediately because there's something else we need to do. So this is our copy data activity. We're going to call it insert metadata. And well, everything is just set the way we just saw. But the fault tolerance, we actually want to skip the incompatible rows, and we don't want to enable a logging. And this is just for the demo because it's just a really messy data set. So we're going to go ahead and save this, and then we can start running this one. And it will just copy the CSV file that we have into our lakehouse. So over here, you can see the progress. And while this is running, we actually start our second job. And that's, we want to have this data set kind of cleaned up, right? So I'm going to show you how to do this. We're going back to our workspace, and then this time we're going to create a data flow. So that's over here. And well, we can see here that the job ran successful. And okay, so here we're in the data flow interface, and we're going to get our data from our lakehouse. So let's type in lakehouse. And this is going to be the lakehouse that we just created with the data pipeline. So we're going to go to our workspace. And then this is the lakehouse that we just configured. And over here is our data set. So we're going to go ahead and get this one. And yeah, so this takes a second to load. So this is the entire data set that we have, right? But we only need to have data about KLM. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead to our code, airplane code over here. And we're just going to filter everything that equals the value of KLM. So basically, this is all the flight data that we have about KLM in this data set. But you can still see that it's really messy. So just for the demo, we're just going to clean up like a bit. So for example, the IATA code over here, we see a lot of null values. So what you can do is you can go ahead and replace the values. So all the null we want to replace by KL. And yeah, so overhead, you can do that like a lot of other different transformations. But for now, I think we're just going to publish this data set because we need to move on with our session. So we're going to add the destination, and it's going to be the same lake house. And right now, we're going to give it a different table name. And we're going to go to our same workspace again. And over here, This is where we want to load the data. Again, this is kind of done all automatically, but you can still make adjustments. And then let's save the settings. And over here, we want to rename our data flow. So we're going to call it clean, or like metadata KLM, and I'll clean up. So we're going to go ahead and publish this this one. And this is going to take a while, but in the meantime, we can go to our pipeline over here. And over here, we can import data flows. So we're going to create a data flow, and we're going to run this data flow after the insert went successfully. And well, we're going to clean up KLM. And then we should have gotten a notification by now that the data flow has, here we go. So over here, we can go ahead in our workspace, select, I need to do a refresh, select this data flow. And there you go. This is, we can save this now. And we can run this job as well. This is about taking like 5 minutes. So I'm actually going to say, Martijn, you can continue with your part.
Yes. Thank you. Let me share my screen. That makes sense. Let's see. Yes, and I think it should be visible by now, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we have seen the ease of using batch data in Fabric. I think, well, Michael showed that in, well, what was it? Like 10 minutes, you can do quite a lot of stuff in cleaning and transforming your data. So that's very cool to see. But now we're going to see, okay, how does streaming data work in Fabric? So first, let's have a brief overview. Okay, what do we understand with streaming data? I think the main thing why we have streaming data is, of course, to challenge one of the shortcomings, so to say, of batch data, and that is that by using batch data, you introduce latency. That means that whenever you process your data, it's already old data. So typically, batch data is, for example, scheduled every night. So you will only be able to report on data from the previous day. And in some use cases, that just isn't fast enough. And that's why streaming data is such a powerful tool, because it allows for near real-time data processing. So that's the main focus of streaming data is, okay, you want to report on events that are happening right now. One of the aspects that streaming data has, therefore, is that it's a continuous data flow. So it's basically an infinite data set that just keeps on arriving every second with new data. In the end, the data that will arrive is small in size, but because it will arrive constantly, in the end, it's still large in volume. So that's why we have streaming data in the first place. Let's have a look at some characteristics of the data. That's also always important to mention. Streaming data is chronologically significant. What that means is that the most important data is the most recent data. If you look at the airline industry, you could say, okay, we are measuring the heat of a motor, for example, of an engine. Well, if you want to see if it's overheating, yes or no, you don't really care about the data of 10 minutes ago, but you care about what is the temperature right now, because then you can actually still do something about it. So that means how older the data gets, the less significant it also gets. On top of that, it's continuously flowing, which I already mentioned. It's a constant stream of data that is arriving at your engine, at your streaming process. On top of that, the data is often unique, because you get individual measures, for example, every second, and it's combined with a timestamp. So the data is quite unique in in its format. On top of that, it's often non-homogeneous. That means that you can get data from several sources, for example, one in JSON format, another in XML. That means that you have to, well, being able to adapt to that. and that is one of the characteristics as well. And then lastly, it's also often imperfect because we don't take the time to clean everything, to do exceptional processing on make sure that the data is right all the time. But it's all about the speed. So you have to deal with imperfect data. If a sensor isn't sending any data for a few minutes, you still have to deal with that. So that is streaming in a nutshell. How does it look on Fabric? Well, we have a real-time analytics architecture that is provided by Fabric, by Microsoft. And what we see, it's a quite classical architecture, I would say, because you have your data source that will be ingested into a KQL database, a custom query language it stands for. And in the end, we can expose that data, for example, in Power BI, or send it to a notebook to do some machine learning, for example. Next, we will move on to the demo, where we also will follow this architecture. And to elaborate a bit on that, we will be using a Python script to simulate our streaming data. So it will be sending data through Event Hubs, Microsoft Event Hub every second. From the Event Hubs, we make the connection to Fabric, where it will be stored into a KQL database. And on top of that, we're going to make a Power BI dashboard to have, a real-time dashboard to see what is happening. So that being said, let us move over to some code. So what we have here is a Python script which will be sending data. To be more specific, it will be this kind of format, but then in JSON. So we have once again which airline it is, or which airport it's arriving, which airport it has been departed, and some more interesting stuff such as the average of the velocity of the airplane and its altitude, for example. So we have some data on which we can do some analysis. So I'm going to run the script. It will now be sending data to Event Hub. So it's time to move over to Fabric to see if we actually get the data over there. So we are already here in our stream analytics environment, our stream engine, which is once again quite powerful because the only thing you have to do is configure your connections, and Microsoft Fabric does the rest. So right here, we had made a connection from our Event Hubs, and then we select the destination, which is our flight demo KQL database. And the cool thing is that if you want to add more, for example, okay, I want to also send my data to the lakehouse. So later on, we can do also some batch analysis on that in the combination with the data that Michael has provided. That's all possible, all with the blink of a click. So you can once again, select your connections and send it over there. But for the purpose of this demo, we're going to keep it nice and simple. And we're just going to focus on the KQL. That went wrong. Yes. So let's move over to our database where we see the data hopefully being ingested. Let us see. We have some data over here. We see the last 24 hours. We already have 1,100 records inserted. If I do some refresh, we see that the number is actually increasing. So luckily for us, it is actually it's working as it's supposed to be. And here in the KQL database, we can see, okay, we have indeed our columns that we have seen before. And on top of that, the stream engine has added some timestamps. So we have the event process time and the queue time. So that is really what makes the data unique. Once we're here, we can do some quite cool things to make some quick analysis right away. So if you click on Explore Your Data on our table, we can right away query the data in real time. So we have some example queries actually over here already. So if I put my table name here, we could, for example, say, okay, give us the first 100 rows. Well, you see, this looks a lot like the data that I just showed you. So we can say that it's coming over correctly, which is always nice. We can do some counting, or we could, for example, say, okay, how many data has been ingested in the last hour in this instance, or every hour. So we can see today it's the 27th. So we have already inserted 86 rows this hour. So it's doing its job, but I also created a query that's a little bit more complex, but not too complex actually. But it's a bit more interesting to build a report upon, because this, it's not very nice to show in a Power BI report, I guess. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at all the data that has been processed 3 minutes ago, or in the last 3 minutes, I have to say. And we want to see the average velocity of those airplanes and the average altitude of those airplanes. So we can first of all run this query to make sure that it actually is working. Well, we got some results, which is nice. And then the cool thing is you can either save it as a query set on which you can build reports later on, but you also can already build your Power BI report right on this query. So you can really write your query, see if, and try to build a report up on it. And if you see, okay, I'm still missing some data, you can go back right away and add some more, or alter your data, or alter your query so that you have the right data. But for now, let's say we want to make a simple line chart out of it. Or let me try to make this a bit larger so we can see it. And then we will just plot the average altitude and velocity on the axis. Let's also make a distinction by the flight number. And there we see we already have quite an interesting graph, I would say. Well, let's save it. Let's make it live flight demo. Select our workspace where we want to save it. And then wait a few seconds, of course. Cool, our report is saved. And then we can quickly visit it to see if it's really working, yes or no. Of course, I have to log in again. Security is important. Let me see. There we have it. Is it loading? Yes, there we have our report. As of now, it's not real time yet. There's one thing we have to do, and that is adding a page refresh. So as of now, it's not automatically being refreshed, but you can set it, for example, at, well, every second, so to say, and then you can really have that real-time experience. Not going to do that right now because otherwise I will forget to switch it off. But just to, yes, I don't want to save it, but just to show that we actually are using real-time data, I can click the refresh for this instance manually, and you see that the data is actually changing. So once again, we can see that in a relatively short time, we can really build pretty cool analytics on real-time data. So I think that is really the power of using Fabric in this instance for streaming data, that you have a really, well, the ease of use is very high. So it doesn't take a lot of time or effort to extract value from your data, and it's more about configuring everything rather than having to program everything yourself and having to combine a lot of different services from Microsoft, which is just way more convenient. That being said, I think it's move on to how CI/CD fit into this picture and how, well, that can make our lives easier and why we should use it. So Hammond, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So I'm sharing my screen right now. Guys, are you able to hear me properly and see my screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, we have seen the power of the Fabric, and now how CI/CD can help you with that. So let's see. Implementing CI/CD in Fabric, what you can do, like Fabric has a lot of things that can be done. First is like Git integration, utilize Git repository to manage your data, including artifacts like pipeline destination, data flow configuration, a lot. You can back up and version your work, you revert previous changes that you have done. Sometime it may happen that when you are working on a Power BI report, you add certain your wrong column and later you realize that, hey, this is not what I want to be. Rather than like doing everything manually, you can revert back to your changes, collaborate with other people, and apply capability with similar source control tools like merging and other things. So that is the one thing. Second, what you can do, you can incorporate the automatic testing. Well, you have seen a workflow, you can incorporate the automatic testing within the various stages of different pipeline to check your data is correct and reports are coming correct. Data gaps BI validator for the Power BI report testing, and there are a few other tools which you can use like Selenium, but they to use it, deployment pipelines like design pipeline to promote changes across development. You have seen a data set created within one environment and report, but what if it's a like development environment? You want to always, once a developer is done with his work, you want to promote it to the testing environment. And once the testing is good, then definitely to the production environment. So you can have all those deployment pipelines, up to 10 different deployment pipelines you can have within Fabric right now. And there are certain supported items because right now this integration is in preview feature. So there are certain items which are supported within the Fabric. One is data flow Gen 1, data marts, lakehouse, notebook, paginated reports, and semantic models, warehouses are supported. There are a list of some unsupported items right now as well. It doesn't mean that they're not going to support it. It's slowly they're going to cover it up, which is like data flow Gen 2, data pipelines, direct lake semantic model, push data set, workbook, and matrix. So these are the few which will not support it yet. And what the cool feature that they have introduced right now that you can deploy content programmatically as well via REST APIs. So there's one nice feature that have been added recently within the CI/CD capabilities for Fabric that can enhance your experience working with this and also make your life easier. If you're working somewhere in Python and you don't want to go and deploy from the portal, you can trigger it from your code as well. So that is a cool feature there. You can also do monitoring, like monitoring health of your pipeline, resource usage, and data quality metrics are really very important when you're implementing CI/CD. The tools that you can use, there are a lot of tools that you can use. Few of them are Azure Monitor and Application Insight. Are we good till here? So why using CI/CD with Fabric? There are few things which this CI/CD, like continuation integration and continuous development, provide. If you want to take like a summary, like it faster time to value, enhanced reliability, scalability, and improved collaboration. So these are the things that you can benefit from. If you look on a picture on the right hand side, it shows that hey, slowly how you efficiency, quality, and speed will improve, and the cost will decrease. Initially, when you implement CI/CD or some automation, there is a cost incurred, but the time, and again, you use it with reduced errors, you reap the benefits out of it. So CI/CD with Microsoft Fabric accelerate the time to market for data engineer solution by automating like deployment processes, new feature, and updates can be delivered to the production environment quick and efficiently, reducing time to market. And the data engineers don't have to do the repetitive stuff, or the mundane stuff. They all can be automated, and they can really focus upon creating the business value and content. You can enhance the reliability by introduction of automated testing between the processes. When it runs, it checks, and when it approves it, then only it gets deployed. The certain one thing that also comes is scalability, like handling growing data volumes, complexity with system design for expansion. Microsoft Fabric offers scalability to accommodate growing data workload and user demand. Uh, and integration with Azure services provide additional scalability and flexibility for data engineering tasks. The same you can utilize with CI/CD if you are using provisioning your resources via CI/CD. And of course, it also improves collaboration as well. Faster teamwork, version control, the team can share the code. Multiple people can work upon it. They can do the faster deployments with using Git versioning strategy, feature branches. There are a lot unlocked potential that the teams, the data engineers can use, and a lot of teams are moving towards it. So we have talked about the benefits of CI/CD, and when we talk about benefits, there are certain best practices that uh, the teams or data engineers need to keep in mind while implementation of CI/CD. The first is model pipeline. Designing pipeline smaller, independent units for better reusability and maintainability. Like you have small frequent changes to break down your work in smaller pieces, so you can manage your increments, promote your feature to production and to a stakeholder for faster feedbacks, and it also make your troubleshooting very easier. You can use like parameterization, like you can parameterize the pipeline so you don't have to change them when they are moving to different environments. You have certain variables that you configure pertaining to the environment. Uh, like it may be the name of your blob storage you are using or something like that. You can use those things. You can take advantage of pre-built templates, an example provided Microsoft, to accelerate setup of your CI/CD infrastructure when you're talking about Fabric. There is also Azure integration. You can explore the native integration between Synapse, Analytics, Azure DevOps, etc. You can streamline testing, deployment, and monitoring process as well. With the help of these, you can also establish continuous feedback. When we talk about like best practices for CI/CD, one thing that we need to keep in mind that we need a continuous feedback loop uh, from our stakeholder, from the pipeline that are running to understand the thing, how it can be done. Uh, the instrument pipeline to generate detailed logs and metrics for troubleshooting optimization. We can utilize the build monitoring capabilities of Fabric pipelines, integrate them with Azure Monitor for a centralized viewing of your data engineering landscape. That can be done. Security and compliance. Security, nonetheless, is very important when you talk about data with GDPR compliance, all those. What it can be done, like you can assign RBAC role-based controls uh, and define kernel permission within Fabric, apart also within your deployment pipelines. You can encrypt the data, and also those deployments will be available for auditing as well. Recently, for one of our customer, we have done a financial. We have enabled them to do financial auditing for JSOC compliances. Over there, we have used all the capabilities of Azure DevOps that we can use to leverage and provide those reports to the auditor. What we have done over there, it's not in the slide, but I'm adding on top of it. What we have done, there is a big energy company within Netherlands, and they need to abide to a financial regulator. That is an international financial regulator, and those to them, the software should be auditable as the reports as well and data too, and the deployments also. So we have used the capabilities of Azure DevOps to capture the builds for like 1 year that can be generate audit reports. We have implemented the security over there that the only defined and desired set of people can do the deployments, and what kind of deployment they can do, they cannot. And also we have also implemented the approval gate as well. So whenever a deployment to production is triggered, email or a notification sent to the product owner and in his or her absence to the backup. And once they go through uh, the relevant PBI and build that, hey, if it contains the correct thing that we want to deploy, are the particular test cases are attached. Once they are confident about it, they can approve it. So auditing and security compliance can be used within integration, and it can make the life of people way easier, believe me, because like what happens usually at end of the audit once in a year or once in 6 months or a quarter, people sit down, try to get the data, arrange emails, the life become much more easier and compliant as well. So these are the best practices we talked about. So we have seen what uh, Fabric can be done in integration with CI/CD. We have seen the best practices, but also there's something troubleshooting which we haven't talked about. I got this nice picture where some few Marines from U.S. armies are troubleshooting within a submarine. I find it is interesting to put it here because they are also feeling nerd as we feel while fixing something. So there are some troubleshooting that we can do over there. There are certain common problems that occurs and how to troubleshoot them. Usually what happens when you implement CI/CD within data engineering or within Fabric, or not specifically to the Fabric, but in the data landscape, certain thing can happen like pipeline failure, deployment pipeline fail, or the data pipeline that you have created, it fails. So you can inspect logs. For that, you have to keep logs into a table or a blob state somewhere. You can check the resource availability, like the network, sometimes the compute resources uh, need to be increased. Like for an example, within Fabric, you can check, hey, the resources that you have used are sufficient enough or you need to increase. We can take an example of a Snowflake as well. Over there, you can also look if there is some problem and you can increase your resources and verify credential, of course. Uh, because due to certain regulations, sometimes you need to change your credential after 30 days or something. So that's something you need to keep in mind. If pipeline fails, what you need to check. There can be data quality errors. So what you can do, like examine data profiling result, uh, uh, review transformations, uh, formatting errors, missing values, or value outside the expected range in your data. So what you can do to uh, uh, correct them, you can do data profiling, conduct thorough data profiling on both source and output, transformation logic, create the logic very carefully and always peer review the logic that you have written and look into that. Data lineage is something that you need to keep into your mind. The third point is performance bottleneck. Like the symptoms that you can, that the pipelines are taking significant longer time than expected because sometimes you chunk millions and billions of rows to get the insight within the data. How to look into that? You can do resource monitoring. Use the Fabric monitoring tool like Azure Monitor to identify resource bottleneck, CPU, memory, network, I/O. Inefficient transformation, optimize the any complex data transformation or queries and data volumes. Uh, that can be checked. Deployment issues. Yeah, there can be some deployment issues as well, like there can be mismatch within the environments. You need to check the configuration parameter. As we talked about that if you want to use the component, you should use like more parameterized things. But when you move certain pipeline or code within different environments, sometimes you miss the parameters. That can be an issue. Ensure that unnecessary environment specific adjustment or necessary environment specific adjustment have been made. You have educated permission, there's no dependency conflict, and testing thoroughly. There is also on Microsoft Learn, within the Fabric, they have also provided that, hey, if you are using CI/CD and if you need to troubleshoot, what you should be doing. Uh, so I marked the uh, link within the presentation as well. These are the things that you should be considering upon. A quick recap. We have seen like, hey, why and how we should like implement CI/CD. What are the benefits we can get from CI/CD? What are the best practices? And yeah, what are the troubleshooting we need to do? And if you want to do a demo, it's going to take a whole session for itself. So I have not incorporated the demo over here. And now floor goes back to the data engineers.
Yes, thank you, Hammond. So we have seen, I think, a lot tonight. We have seen what Fabric is, how we can use batch data, how we can use streaming data, and of course, how CI/CD well ties everything together. So if we look what are our key takeaways of tonight, I think one of the major takeaways is that the one lake storage in Fabric really allows for self-service because it's just very easy to combine data from various sources. Fabric being that one-stop shop where you virtually can do everything without the need to worry about infrastructure or tying together different services is really one of the strong suits of Fabric. On top of that, the low-code approach allows for easy implementations. As mentioned before, you're basically focused on configuring stuff rather than programming and tying everything together, which really, it has a significant reduction in the complexity, and perhaps even more important is the time that it takes to extract value from data. I think that once a data engineer is going to use Fabric, or even a data analyst for that matter, or even a business analyst perhaps, you can really focus your time on, I think, the most important thing that we have to do, and that is extracting value from data rather than worrying about the underlying infrastructure and stuff like that. And on top of that, combining DevOps and Fabrics really streamlines the software development, as Hammond just mentioned. It's just good practice to do so, and it's gonna take a bit of time and investment to set it up properly, but in the long run, it will really save a lot of time and issues and make sure that you have a maintainable platform. So I think those are the main takeaways for tonight. But as of now, I would suggest that the floor is open for questions, and I'm really curious to what you guys want to know, what you think. So if you have a question, either put them in the Teams chat or just unmute your mic. That's also fine, and ask a question. And I see, looking at the chat, that we already have some questions. So let me repeat the question, and I'll give it to anyone to answer it. So does processing streaming data actually cost financially more than batch data? That's, I think, an interesting question. My first response is, of course, it depends, which is, often the answer, but not really an answer, I guess. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael or Hammond, that you pay for computing power regardless on how you use it in Fabric. So I think it doesn't really matter in that regard whether you use batch or streaming data. I don't know if you guys think the same.
Yeah, so like it always really depends, right? You do pay for compute. Generally speaking, streaming data used to be a bit more intense. But nowadays, yeah, I think it's coming closer together. But yeah, to say state definitely streaming data is always more expensive. I'm not doing that.
I can elaborate on that question. Fabric has multiple storage components, so not only the compute part, but also the storage part. And if you do real-time data, the data needs to be cached, and that's also being built by Microsoft. So streaming data can be much more expensive than, for example, a data warehouse, which seems a bit contradictory because data warehouse in the past were very expensive. But to give you an example, normal one lake data storage is about 2 cents per gigabyte. The cache data storage is 24 cents per gigabyte. So that's quite a price difference. So that, you should take that into account.
Thanks for that clarification, Eric. Nice. I think that it gives a better answer to your question. So I think, if you do all your data via stream instead of batch streaming, will be more expensive. I think that's the conclusion. We have another question. I think this one is for Hammond. When can there be a demo for the CI/CD part for Fabric? So I think we have to reschedule it, Hammond.
To today's the floor for the data guys who are showcasing the capabilities of Fabric rather than like what CI/CD we can do for it. So I have touched best upon CI/CD. What are the benefits? How to do it? Surely we are gonna arrange one a demo where we will be configuring the CI/CD and how it can be used in Fabric, and the dates will be notified later on. Is that
So I
answer your
think-
question, Maurice?
I think
Yes.
indeed it's a good suggestion to take this onto the backlog of the SoConnect data sessions. That
Yeah.
there is a demand for a extensive demo of Hammond using CI/CD in Fabric. So we'll note that definitely down. Thanks for
It's
the
a good sign,
question.
right? People are
Yeah.
interested to see the demo.
Exactly. And the second question of Maurice is, how can the costs of the Fabric architecture be, how can it be controlled? Are there reports for that? And I think I'm going to pass this question to Eric because he is very into the costs, it seems.
Yeah, I think also the question is depends. There is usage reporting available in Fabric. That's also with Power BI, the Power BI usage report. The cost also depends on what capacity you are using. So if you're using an F capacity in Azure, you should be able to monitor the F capacity in Azure with the cost monitoring in Azure itself. But if you use a Power BI premium capacity, for example, the P1 capacity, then you have a fixed price you pay each month. So that's easier to forecast than having the capacity in Azure, because if you don't fully utilize the capacity in Azure, you don't pay the full amount. So the forecasting is pretty difficult. But you also have the cost management billing from the enterprise agreement portal, and that's where you can see the real costs. But of course, that's always after the cost has been consumed.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Maurice?
Partly, but for now it's okay. It's something that what I see is, of course, that within organizations you have multiple teams. They create their own information products, and with Fabric they can also create the pipelines and that kind of stuff. And but they are also responsible for cost, the team cost. And so I'm just there was a partly you have answered that question.
Eric, there is a product from Sogeti itself, Azure Cost Monitoring, and it would be interesting to see how, I mean, if they already integrated Fabric over there, or it can be a suggestion for them to integrate the cost of Fabric.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We have our cloud economics dashboard, which we are using with multiple clients currently, which is also constantly developed. For example, we are adding Snowflake also to that dashboard, and Fabric, of course, needs to be added to, because we all know that Microsoft is moving to Fabric from Azure Data Services to the Fabric Data Services. So yeah, that's something to consider.
Good addition. I see also a question from Mirela. Should modeling via Fabric be easier than in Power BI? And if so, how do you maybe have a practical example? Do we have a practical example on that? Anyone? Michael, do you have?
So yeah, in fact, it is still Power Query, so I don't think there will be a massive difference, to be honest. So yeah, in that case, I also don't have an example, no.
So you say it's basically the same as before, and not, you know.
Well, there are gonna be small differences, but yeah.
But no favor from one over the other. If you look at the complexity.
I think it really depends. Like if you are in a really specific use case or specific scenarios, you might opt for one over the other. But yeah, this is so specific. I wouldn't be able to point out like the tiny differences.
I hope we read that.
Yeah, thank you very much for answering this. I was also wondering if it's faster somehow. So if you're using the regular way of Power Querying in Power BI versus Fabric, if that will make your model faster. Or
That's a really interesting question. I would actually like to know that as well. Yeah.
Well, for the next session, maybe.
I think the answer here is that Power BI is performing the best way if you use a star model, right? And to create a star model, if you look at the data warehouse persona in Fabric, you have the modeling canvas, and that's where you create your star model. But the modeling canvas is only available in the data warehouse, so not in the lakehouse or not in the streaming data, streaming analytics persona. So also in regards to your previous question, modeling, that's the same as you did in Power BI, but now it's also in the data warehouse section. To have the best performance for your Power BI reports, you should use the direct lake connection, direct lake mode, storage mode to your data warehouse.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but maybe someone wants to ask a question, that feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. Otherwise, I can ask a question to Michael to give some thinking time for the others. In preparing this demo, Michael, what was your thing that or maybe surprised you the most by using Fabric?
To be honest, for me, it was really easy, like the filtering. I was surprised by that. So, you know, just replacing the null values, just, you know, cleaning the whole data set. It's just like a few clicks. I would have guessed that would have taken a lot, like longer in other surfaces. So yeah, really pleasantly surprised by that.
Cool.
So, but I can ask that same question to you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think once again that what I believe is really the power of Fabric, that it's well, the ease of use and the speed on which you can generate results and insights from your data. I think that's a very powerful tool. And as Erik also mentioned, you have a different persona. So I think a lot of different personas can use Fabric and speed up their processing in the end, delivering value. So I think that's a major benefit, and I was pleasantly surprised by that. Of course, you hear it in the demonstration by Microsoft that it would be the case, but actually experience yourself is quite cool. So that would be for me. I see a remark in the chat. I have seen one MVP doing comparing using PySpark execution in Synapse and Fabric Synapse, discovering that Fabric could deliver it in 4 seconds, whereas without Fabric it takes 3 minutes. So that's, I would say, quite the improvement.
That sounds like a win, yeah.
So thank you for that remark. Not really a question,
Could
but
be
still,
a little caveat in this, and that's in Synapse, the Spark cluster needs to warm up. So that needs time to start the cluster. In Fabric, there's no warm-up time required. So that could also explain the difference.
Yeah, that's a good remark. That's a very good remark. But I think that's also a nice feature, that you don't have to wait for that startup period. That's I think still a plus. Do we have any other questions? I see someone, Mirela.
Yeah, I was thinking that related to the timing could be also a reason why companies would adopt it more and more. Yeah, Fabric, because in the end, especially for even live streaming, but also in general, you don't want to wait so much for your report to load or for your data to show up. If in Fabric comes faster, it's a plus.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think indeed one of the reasons why companies, organizations are thinking or moving towards Fabric is one, of course, the ease of use, but also that Microsoft, I believe, is very much pushing Fabric. Not forcing, I wouldn't say that, but at least stimulating to move towards Fabric, which is
Yes,
I think also
Microsoft is
helps.
bullish on Fabric.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, and it's like what was said before, right? So like the developments are going to be happening in Fabric. So, you know, the thing that like with Fabric it takes 3 minutes or like 4 seconds opposed to like minutes. That might be one of those developments already, right? So yeah, that would be quite a nice incentive for companies to move over to Fabric.
Yeah, I am also curious about the migration, because if you're already having your everything in place and leading to Power BI, then the transition to Fabric, how long does that take?
So I would say that the migration itself would not be as difficult. Like it's still going to be a migration, right? But I would say it's not as difficult as opposed to most migrations. But yeah, there should be documentation about out there that kind of tells you like how to go about it.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Let me see. Boris also asked a question, interesting question. What factors might play a role in a decision to use other data solutions instead of using Fabric? In other words, why shouldn't we be using Fabric this moment? I think one of the aspects is that Fabric is still in development, so to say. So of course they're making very much a lot of progress, but I think there are still some scalability issues or features that are not rolled out yet. Maybe Erik can elaborate a bit more on that, because I know he is into that as well.
Yeah, it's all about maturity, right? Also the level of governance, data governance you can apply to within Fabric. Currently, if you have access to a workspace, you have access to all personas. So if you are a data engineer, you have also access to a data warehouse. And maybe some enterprises are not willing to give data engineers access to change a schema in a data warehouse, for example. So that's still under development, and also the one security layer. So the data security layer on the one lake is still very much under development. And next to that, the whole Purview integration, so your data cataloging and your data policies, etc., that's also currently under development. So I would say it's a very high potential platform, but it's not yet enterprise ready to have it as a full-blown enterprise data platform.
And do you have any idea like what timeline the roadmap has? So in other words, when do you think that it will be enterprise ready?
Yeah, a lot of MVPs I speak are saying end of this year, Q4, because then the one security layer would be implemented fully, and also the Purview integration, but also the network, so the private networking features will then be also available in Fabric. So, and that makes it more secure, more compliant, and makes it more enterprise ready.
So then if you are an organization that wants to start out or move to Fabric, then would it be a wise decision to, even though it's not enterprise ready yet, still start with migrating, because it will probably take a while, and then you can enjoy Fabric right away once it's fully up to scale? Would you suggest that, or would there still be a reason not to choose Fabric?
No, I would definitely start with Fabric, because it has a lot of potential, and you don't have the hassle of managing your infrastructure in Azure. So it offers a lot of benefits, but you need to be very conscious about having your production workloads. And for example, your financial reporting in Fabric, if you don't have the right data governance tools in place. But I would definitely start with it, experiment with it. Every week new features are added. So yeah, it's a very nice, very speedy evolving data platform.
And if you look at, for example, AWS or Google, do they have some kind of competitor that you think that can match the offering that Microsoft is having with Fabric?
That's a tricky question, but a good question. It's a bit comparing apples and oranges, right? It's the same if you compare Fabric with Synapse and Data Factory and your data lake storage. You need to manage all those separate components.
Yeah.
You need to set up your CI/CD pipelines to deploy those components and apply the security rules and monitor all the components. That's been taken away by using Fabric, because Fabric is a SaaS solution. So that's a very nice, I think, benefit of Microsoft Fabric.
Yeah, definitely. I hope that answers your question, Boris.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Cool. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I think it's time to move towards an end. Waiting 5 more seconds, and otherwise, no. I think every question has been asked and answered. If you have some questions later on, feel free to reach out to one of us, and we will still try to answer that to the best way possible. That being said, it brings us to the end of an evening about Fabric, about batching, about streaming and CI/CD. Please make sure to follow our SoConnect Meetup page, where we will post all of our new events, including, of course, the session about CI/CD and Fabric by Hammond. Definitely keep that posted. It will be up there. So please make sure to follow that one. And lastly, I think I want to thank Hammond and Michael for their story, and also Eric for his answering the question. So
Yeah, and obviously, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. So that being said, make sure to follow our Meetup page to see the latest events, and have a nice evening, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.